Welcome to episode 4 of the DevDecoder podcast.
Like Star Wars, probably the best episode yet.
Episode 6 is the best.
Episode 6. Episode 5 is well known to be the best episode.
No, it isn't. Jabba the Hutt is the best character.
Okay, whatever, but you're wrong.
So we have some exciting news.
We do?
What's our exciting news, Craig?
I don't know what's our exciting news. Oh, we have new microphones.
As you can probably tell, it's less echoey.
Yes, your microphone is white.
Yes.
But mine is black.
Mine's ethos aligned.
Mine's like Darth Vader.
What's mine like? One of those stormtroopers.
Yeah. Darth Vader, better than stormtroopers. So there we go. You're listening to DevDecoder podcast. You can subscribe and like us on all the major podcasting platforms and YouTube.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at DevDecoder.
You can email us using podcast@devdecoder.com.
Or check out our website at devdecoder.com.
We love hearing from all our listeners, so make sure you get in touch and let us know what you'd like to hear about.
I actually have some news that's not based on social media this week.
Wow. Actually, can we take a moment to reflect on that? Because I'm actually feeling a warm, fuzzy glow inside that maybe our conversations over the past week have caused you to reach out and find out new information about the tech industry.
So have you seen anything in the news about Norman?
There's so many potential Normans in this world, but very few of them are interesting.
What's the first Norman you think of when it comes to Norman?
William the Conqueror?
No,
wasn't he a Norman?
I have no idea. This guy is not boring.
Okay, Norman Tebbit.
Think of a film.
A film with a guy called Norman in it?
Yeah.
We're all like, yeah.
You don't. See?
Oh, Norman Bates.
Yes.
Psycho.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Why are we talking about Psycho?
So basically, somebody has created a psychopathic AI and called him Norman.
They've created it. So this is back onto the are the robots going to kill us all thing, isn't it?
Yeah, we're back onto that subject. Yeah. I'm telling you, robots are going to take over the world. Yeah. 100%.
I mean, you might have a point, because why would somebody create a psychopathic AI?
So basically, they've created him. I'm going to call him because he's called Norman. So he was created to look at what dark corners of the net would do to its worldview.
So this is an AI that's been basically searching the dark web?
No.
Well, you said looking at what the dark corners of the net...
No, so what people from the dark corners of the net,
okay,
if they wanted to create, a really bad robot... This is like a reality of what would happen.
So they think that the dark web and the dark corners of the net are where people spend their time looking at how to create bad things like bad robots, and not just actually trying to trade drugs.
Well, they don't just do that, do they? So maybe some people are looking at creating, really bad robots.
And maybe it is smart for them to be doing this, because what they're doing is they're investigating what could happen so that we can defend against that. These are the kind of things, and they're showing the dangers.
Still think they're going to take over the world.
Some days like today, I kind of hope they do.
Last week, we touched a little bit on anxiety.
Yeah, anxiety seems to be one of those things that is becoming more prevalent in the workplace, especially amongst young people. I've seen a lot of the people coming here and starting working here really struggling with handling workloads and stress, and it's something that we've been working really hard on in the last year.
I think everyone has personal experiences with mental health, whether it be themselves or somebody they know. So it's great that we've started focusing it on a lot more and trying to improve.
It was really nice to get an invite off Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Manchester, to come and talk about some of these issues and about trying to get people that have had difficulties, both with mental health and physical health, back into the workforce and back into work. And one of the things that he said that really stuck with me was that some of the people that we help on that journey and get through that become our best employees. And certainly that's been my experience. Some of my best employees are people that struggle to get back into work, and now that they're here, have really found a home and a place for themselves and are really enjoying work. So it was really good to hear Andy talking about that.
Taking more control over social security, over the whole question of how we support people into work is a crucial part of what we're trying to build here. And I feel, as Mayor of Greater Manchester, that the best thing that we can do is put in place support systems to make the most of our best asset. be that young people coming through school or helping people who, for whatever reason, have fallen out of the workplace, helping them to make the transition back in. The 21st century health issue is, in my view, mental health because of the levels of stress and insecurity that people are absorbing these days. Much more than, let's say, the generation before us. If you go back to the 70s or 80s, people weren't living with insecure work and homes. You know, life was tough still, but it was people had a more solid set of foundations beneath them. And of course, that isn't the case anymore. Life has changed. It has become more precarious for many people, and because of that, I think it is affecting people's mental health and well-being. And you can hear this all the while now. There's a growing call. There's a gap, a big gap actually, between the growing demand for mental health services and the actual provision, because they've never been particularly prioritised within the National Health Service. And when it comes to the DWP and incapacity benefit as it was, or employment and support allowance, there was a check introduced called the Work Capability Assessment that many of you will be familiar with, and a critique that was made of it is the same critique that's often made of the NHS, that it doesn't give sufficient regard to mental health. And I think the only way to deal with those challenges is to adopt a whole society approach, where public sector works in partnership with private sector, which works in partnership with voluntary sector and community and faith sector, and we harness what all of those sectors are able to contribute to tackle the big challenges of our times. And the point about something like today is, it's not just for us to say to you, we know everything and this is how it's going to be, and we expect you then to sort of take it away and implement it. It's about listening to you too and saying, well, actually, if you could help us design this, if you could tell us what would work better for you as employers, then we're prepared to listen to that too. And that's the way we're going about things with devolution in Greater Manchester. We're already beginning to make a success because of this new approach that we're pioneering. I want each and every person in this room to be a part of this growing Greater Manchester success story. I want us all to commit to a Greater Manchester where we leave no person, no place behind, where everyone's got a part to play in building the future of Greater Manchester. And I think if we can all sign up today, then we can really move forward from there. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Microsoft have just purchased a company for $7.5 billion.
$7.5 billion? I actually did see that on the news this week. It's about GitHub. It's something to do with code sharing.
Code sharing? Yeah, that's actually really good. It's actually what we call a distributed version control system.
Okay? Oh, you've lost me.
Yeah. So it's a way for people to collaborate on writing code together. It's not really about sharing code, like giving code to other people, or it's used for that. Its primary goal is to allow people from all over the world to work together on the same piece of code.
So it's like a coding community?
Yeah, coding community. And it's really the home of a lot of open source software. Do you know what open source is?
No.
So open source is effectively source code that is publicly available and freely usable. And actually, a lot of modern products are built on open source software. A lot of things run on an open source software operating system called Linux. And actually, the guy who made Git is also the same guy who wrote Linux and created Linux many years ago. So he's given the world two very big pieces of software. It's a very different model than, for example, the system that Apple uses and Microsoft for a long time have used, which is closed source software, where they write the software but only they have it. And it has a lot of advantages because it allows people to independently verify how the code works, and therefore we can see that it's secure, we can see that they're not spying on. It's a very good way of doing it. But yeah, the news is that Microsoft have bought it, and I think it's made a lot of people very nervous.
So what does that mean then? What does it mean for people?
Well, I think a lot of people are nervous because GitHub is seen as the bastion of the open source community, and Microsoft in the past has been infamous for being champions of closed source software. People are worried that this is going to affect the open source community, but actually, if you've been paying attention to Microsoft over the last few years under its new leader, they've been embracing the open source community a lot. They've been open sourcing their own .NET framework, which is a very popular framework of software framework that they use. And after all, Microsoft has given us their word.
me a minute to think about that. So I'm trying to understand what GitHub is. So can people from other sides of the world actually work on the same piece of code together?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I think is really important is that GitHub is a great place for people who are trying to get into this industry or trying to learn how to write software to go and look at how software is created and developed. But it's the way that we work in modern software development. So if you ever want to work in the industry, you will use some form of version control system, and Git for the last few years has been the most dominant one of those.
So we'll just have to see what Microsoft have planned.
Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic, and I'm quite keen to see what comes of it.
This week I'm speaking to Ian, who's one of the directors at Web Apps.
Hello.
Hi, Ian.
How are you today?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm so excited to be here.
So why don't you tell our listeners a bit about how you got into software engineering?
Well, I've always had an interest in technology in general, mainly programming. Started picking it up when I was about 11 years old. Just went through one of my brother's textbooks. He was doing a full course at high school, and just started putting a program together. Later on, take a few years, I just started looking at job boards online and doing a bit of freelance stuff. And that was really how I got my foot in the door.
So what was it about coding that you really enjoyed?
I think I'm not a very artistic person, but programming is a way that I can express myself. I like the logical steps of solving problems and putting them together, and I like the freedom of creating something new.
So did you end up going to university?
No, I didn't. So I went through high school. I did IT. Following that, I went on to college. I was first doing my AS levels. They weren't working out too well for myself. So I went and did a BTEC. Unfortunately, the course closed early, so I went back to finish off my A levels, but I had to resit because the curriculum changed. So just through college for myself.
So would you say that people would need a degree in order to get a career in software engineering?
Not necessarily. I think as long as you've got the motivation, you're willing to learn and put the effort in to actually self-study, you can learn a lot of the things that you need to know as you go along. Universities obviously do offer that foundation, but I don't think it's a requirement to get into the industry.
So what sort of experience did you do coming out of college? How did you get to where you are today?
So as I said, I sort of picked up freelance. So I was working part-time plus studying at college and just picking up the odd bits and ends that I could do. Once I finished college, I just knew that I needed to either go to university and get my degree or get myself into IT. So following that, I sort of just threw my CV out there, and luckily I landed at Web Apps, gave me an interview, and pretty much just walked into the job.
So how have you progressed since working at Web Apps?
Well, I joined Web Apps as a software engineer, and I just really pushed myself and really just tried to absorb as much as I could. And then within 2 years, I was promoted to a senior engineer. 2 years after that, I sort of not disinterested in programming, but maybe wanted to dip my toe in some other areas. So I decided to become a business analyst with web applications, following which I was promoted to the board.
So how much would you say that experience matters in getting a career?
I think it's a bit half and half, really. So I think you need to have that drive and that willingness to sort of push yourself and learn. There's a lot of developers within the industry that have a lot of experience, but they sort of wasted away by not keeping the skills up to date. And then goes the other on the other side is if you don't have the experience, it makes it a lot harder to actually stand out and become recognizable. So I'd certainly suggest, getting your name out there, working on some open source projects, that sort of stuff, and just, putting your name out there.
What would you say to young people who are looking at getting in the industry, if you had a bit of advice that you could give them?
Definitely get involved in open source projects. Find something where you enjoy the community around it and something that you're passionate about, and just go for it. And don't be afraid of failing. You are going to fail in this industry, but, It's the learning and the experience that you take out of it. And if you can fail and then sort of put lessons learned towards the next project, you have a higher chance of succeeding in the future.
Great.
Thanks.
Ian. So my next one, and I'll see you've got an Apple Watch on, Craig.
Yes, I do.
Do you use the Apple Watch?
Every day.
What for?
Mostly for staying fit. So I use the activity rings. I've now got, I think it's 550-day streak or so.
So it's like a Fitbit?
Yeah, like a Fitbit.
So you wouldn't use it for checking messages?
Yeah, I check messages on it. And so if I'm out walking, it'll pop up messages and I can see somebody's text messaged me. I can also make phone calls on it.
Do you do that? Do you speak to your wrist?
I have occasionally, although I've got AirPods, so I've got the Apple AirPods, which are the headphones, and I stick those in my ears.
The expensive ones.
But they sync with the Apple Watch as well. So if I'm out on a run or anything like that, I don't even need to have my phone on me, but I can still receive phone calls.
Interesting. So basically, I'm bringing this up because in Ontario, a woman has been fined for checking her Apple Watch at traffic lights. So she's been driving and she's slowly... Well, the lights have gone on green and she's taken too long to pull off and a police car is behind her and he's fined her for checking her Apple Watch. Now, she says that she's just checked the time and you have to double tap it to check the time.
Yeah.
And he said that it took too long. So what are your views on, Apple Watches in your car? It's kind of the same with a phone, isn't it?
I think it's quite interesting. I mean, if you actually look at most of the countries, I don't know the Canadian traffic law personally, but most countries define that you need to be paying attention and in control of your car. And so there's an argument that anything that is distracting you is therefore, if it's overly distracting you or causing you not to drive and pay attention to the road and not to drive carefully, then it doesn't matter whether it's an Apple Watch or listening to the radio. It doesn't really matter. You're not paying attention. And this is interesting because we were talking about self-driving cars last week, weren't we? And one of their advantages is they don't get distracted. But I think it's a bit mean on a watch because people wear watches all the time and they glance at their watches every time. And I've never heard of anyone being pulled over for just checking the time. I suspect that she didn't spend 30-40 seconds checking the time on her Apple Watch, though, did she?
I just don't see the point in them.
In watches or?
Apple Watches. I see the point in watches.
Well, ironically, I used to wear a watch all the time when I was younger, but I stopped wearing watches as an adult because I didn't really feel the need to... You had a watch on your phone, effectively. So I stopped wearing watches. I wear one now, one, because I get fit, and two... because when I broke my arm, the nerve damage, it helps me not notice the pain as much. So having a watch on there, I quite like it for that. But the main reason for me is because it's a great way to stay motivated. It reminds me as I'm getting to the end of the day that I've just not been active enough that day, or maybe I need to go out for a walk or go for a jog or go on the bike.
Can't you just get a Fitbit for that?
Yeah, but I can get it all in the watch at the same time and get the other benefits. It is nice, for example, I find them less on my phone because I have the watch. Well, I don't...
You're joking?
No, genuinely. A lot of people have said this as well, but I found it very true because before, if I got a message whilst I was out walking or doing something, my phone would vibrate and you have no idea what that is, so I need to deal with it straight away. So you'd get the phone out and look and go, all right, whatever. And by then you're on the phone and now you're like browsing Reddit or reading your Facebook posts. Well, if it's on your watch and it beeps and it's just a quick message from someone, I can see what the message is. I've now seen the message and I'm done. Okay? So it's actually... I find I get my phone out of my pocket a lot less. I can just see that I've dealt with that and it's done.
I disagree. You're always on your phone. Always. In
Joey,
meetings.
No, to be fair, I'm only on the phone in meetings that you're in.
I disagree.
But you wouldn't know because they're only the meetings that you're in.
I just don't see the point.
In what?
Like spending what is it, £400?
I think they're from about £300 plus, depending which models you go at.
I just rather use my phone. I just don't get it. Guess you've got to do exercise to have one though, right?
Yeah, for someone like you, you do keep trying to start exercising and stuff. So this might be the thing you're missing. You might just be needing it. It's not your fault. It's the fact you don't have an Apple Watch.
He's on his phone again, everyone. But he's never on his phone because he's got a watch.
Just because I have work to do. Okay, come. I think that was another interesting episode. I really enjoyed hearing from Andy Burnham.
I think it's great that we're now focusing on mental health, but not just the company, everywhere.
And I was really impressed with how much more you seem to be knowing about the tech industry.
I know.
That you knew GitHub had been purchased and you knew it was a code sharing website.
It's mad. It's mad.
Yeah, I do think maybe you've started doing a bit of research or something.
I have to, because otherwise I don't know what to talk about.
And these new microphones are fun.
Mine's better than yours.
Well, yeah, we'll find out.